So I wanted to share a little bit about our school and our students so you would have more familiarity with what kinds of kids we deal with. So the first couple slides tell you a little bit more about our program. Outlook Academy is a charter school for students in grades 6 through 12. It's a special charter school. It's called the Strict Discipline Academy. And Strict Discipline Academies accept students who are expelled from school, long-term suspended, court-ordered, or placed through an IEP, which is special education. There are only 8 of them in the whole state of Michigan, which is kind of scary to me when you think about the number of kids probably who are out of school and not able to receive an education. Outlook has 3 sites. Some of you might not know that. We have a site by the Allegan Tech Center, which is where I'm housed most of the time, and then the Allegan County Youth Home and the Allegan County Jail. So you will be mentoring at the site by the Allegan County Tech Center. The juvenile home, our staff works, the teachers work at both sites and they travel back and forth. And the Allegan County Jail, we only serve the inmates who are 21 and under and who don't have a high school diploma or a GED. And that program has been very successful. We have one staff member we hire there who does the career and college readiness kind of, and then we contract with Zealand Adult Ed, and they do the GED prep and that kind of thing. And there can be a large number of kids in that site too, but it has been successful, so I'm glad people are graduating with GEDs from jail. That's good. So we have 2 7th graders, 2 8th graders, 6 9th graders, 5 10th graders, no 11th graders, and then 5 12th graders. 3 female students right now and 17 male students. So a lot of we've had 5 graduates and 3 of them are female, so a lot of our population is graduating, which is awesome. So 85% of our population are white, 5% Native American, 5% Hispanic, and 5% are 2 or more races. On paper, 88.6% of our students are economically disadvantaged, but I would argue the number is probably very close to 100%. Not everyone fills out the free and reduced lunch forms, which is why it may not be 100%. 8% of our students are at or above grade level for reading. So take that in. Only 8% are at or above grade level for reading. So that means 92% are below grade level for reading. So a lot of them are well below grade level. They're testing in an elementary level and they're middle school and high schoolers. And 12.5% are at or above level for math, and 87.5% are below grade level for math. So they're really struggling with their academics because if they're testing low for reading and math, they're not being very successful. So then we're going to talk about the ACEs a little bit more in depth, but just to get an idea before we take the survey ourselves, who are our students? So there are ACEs, which are adverse childhood effects, and there's a scale that you fill out a survey. We're going to do it here too and see what ours are. And of the students that we currently have or that came this fall, these are the numbers, and we'll go into what it means a little bit later. But one student had 0 ACEs, and I know who the student is who took the survey, and it is not accurate, but that is how he self-answered the question. 4 students said they had 1 ACE, and again, knowing who they are, I would argue that it's probably higher. 3 students had 2, 2 students had 3, 3 students had 4, 2 students had 5, 3 had 6, 1 had 7, 1 had 8, and 2 had 9, which is almost all of them. So when you see what they are, your heart will probably break a little bit more. So we're to do this to get an idea of what the ACEs are, I passed out a questionnaire, and you only need to do the top part. And what you do is you read and I could read it. So what you do is you can just put like a check mark by yours. So So section 1, that's the only section we're going to do today. If your parents or guardians were separated or divorced, you would put kind of like a little check mark by it. That would count as 1. If you lived with a household member who served time in jail or prison, that would be at any point you would, again, make a check mark. If you lived with a household member who was depressed, mentally ill, or attempted suicide. If you saw or heard household members hurt or threaten to hurt each other. If a household member swore at, insulted, humiliated, or put you down in a way that scared you, or a household member acted in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt. If someone touched your private parts or asked you to touch their private parts in a sexual way that was unwanted, against your will, or made you feel uncomfortable. If at any time more than once you went without food, clothing, a place to live, or had no one to protect you. If someone pushed, grabbed, slapped, or threw something at you, or you were hit so hard that you were injured or had marks. If you lived with someone who had a problem with drinking or using drugs. And if you often felt unsupported, unloved, or unprotected. So then you would add up the number of marks you made, and in the box up at the top, you would put your number in there. And I know our staff did this, and our staff was, when you did the percentages of those numbers, our staff really mirrored our students. So we have quite a wide range on our staff of experiences too. So I kind of wanted to do it with you guys to get an idea. And I mean, I'm not gonna ask you to tell me your numbers, but I might ask you to send them in to me so we can look them over really quick. Okay. Right. So every time when a student comes in and they enroll with us, we do this just to have kind of a background. And then once a year, our staff does it too. And then I share with them that year what our numbers look like for our students so they kind of have an idea. And then we share with our staff too, because I know at one building I worked with Suzanne. Suzanne was my secretary. And so one of our staff had 0 ACEs, which is fine, but they didn't always understand then sometimes what our students might be going through. And they couldn't, and they would say often, why can't they just leave it at the door? Because, like those of us without a lot going on or a lot of baggage, like it's easier to leave it at the door than for the students who have a lot of struggles. So there's a documentary called Paper Tigers, and maybe we should watch that, but that is about an alternative school that really embraced this trauma stuff, which is what we're trying to do. And they talk about, like, the students think that it's a real tiger coming at them. It's like their adrenaline's going, it's like that, but it's just a paper tiger. It's not a real thing, but in their mind, it is such a big deal. So I'll just kind of share. We have someone with 2, 0, 7, 3, 7, 4, and 6. So we have a wide range here, but we have a lot of staff with a lot of ACE. A lot of staff or volunteers with a lot of ACEs too. So you'll kind of know what the kids are going through just based on that. And I can pass these back out if you would like them back. So I wanted to share a little bit about what ACEs are. They're, as I said before, they're adverse childhood experiences. They refer to 10 specific categories of exposures grouped into 3 types under abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, such as parental substance abuse or mental illness. Exposure without a positive buffer, such as a nurturing parent or caregiver, can lead to toxic stress response in children, which can in turn lead to health problems like asthma, poor growth, and frequent infections, as well as learning difficulties and behavioral issues. In long-term, exposure to ACEs can also lead to serious health conditions like heart disease, stroke, and cancer later in life. So, untreated or without working on the resilience of our students, they actually do have a higher chance of an early death whether it's because of suicide or because of a health problem or a heart attack. I mean, it's just the more of these that you have, the better chance you have of dying at an earlier age. So how do they affect adulthood then? Research shows that adversity we experience as a child can affect our stress response functions, leading to long-term changes in our brain and bodies and leading to health problems as an adult. Experiencing 4 or more ACEs is associated with significantly increased risk for 7 out of 10 leading adult causes of death, including heart disease, stroke, cancer, COPD, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and suicide. So that's like the hard stuff to hear. I know for me, like I went and heard the people who found these ACEs, they're doctors, and they came to Kalamazoo, and I was able to hear them speak. And it's fascinating stuff, but I think like for me, that my next question what does that mean for our students? Because it doesn't have to be that dire. I mean, I have kind of a middle number of ACEs, and I'd like to think that, you know, I have resilience. I've learned how to positively cope with stuff, and that hopefully I changed that number for me. And then I know my kids have less numbers than I do because I'm aware of that. So like, you know, these students can change their lives, and then they can make a better world for their kids eventually if they, you know, if we can work with them. So it means for our students that we can help them and impact their future in positive ways by helping them build resilience. And we can do that there's 3 ways that the researchers talk about all the time, and there's more than this, but these are the top 3 that we talk about at our school. Building a positive relationship with at least one adult. That's a way to build resiliency, to figure out like what the students are good at and build upon those competencies. So what are they good at right now, and how can we help them see that and then build upon that? And then learning how to self-regulate. So that's like, and we'll talk about that in a second, but often adults have to model that for our students to co-regulate alongside them. So it looks like you're really stressed out right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And that kind of thing. Or how about we take a few deep breaths? Or how about let's go walk around? Or maybe you need to shoot a couple baskets. But, you know, we're teaching them how to regulate themselves, but we have to model that because they don't know how to do it. One thing that we've done is to incorporate at all staff meetings the stress level and level of control. So we all share, today my stress level is a 5, and that's because I'm presenting right now, and it's not one of my favorite things to do, especially with a microphone. And my level of control is a 10 because I'm in total control, even though I'm a little more stressed out. And so our thought is when we model it at our staff meetings, and then we share a celebration. My celebration is my daughter had a great time at her dance last night, and my challenge is that I just had 4 days off, and now I have to go back to school tomorrow. So we all go around and we share that at our staff meetings. And then now the teachers are sharing that, and they start the day in a circle with all the kids, and the kids are sharing that. And so the idea is that the kids can see sometimes we're stressed out, but we're still in control. So it is possible to have stress and to still be in control of yourself. And the idea is we're helping them find ways to do that too. So when we're talking about coping, like if you're with your kid and your couple of kids, you can talk about with them how do they deal with stress, or if they talk about being stressed out, you can say, how do you deal with it? Depending on how they answer, because a lot of them will say, I just smoked pot last night, or I played video games all night long, or whatever it is, because those are kind of the things that I see them doing or hear them talk about doing. Some of them will say they play basketball, but depending on how they answer, we might bring up positive and negative ways. So I might say, well, yeah, like smoking pot is a is a way to cope with stress, but is that a positive way? Like, how does that help you? And, a lot of times we talk it through, like, were you able to work on your schoolwork if you were like that? Or, were you able to get anything positively done? And, we can have those conversations. And then just some ideas, what might be some negative ways people deal with stress? What about you guys? I do too. Eat, cook. I used to drink too much. Yeah, so those are negative ways. So what are positive ways of dealing with stress? What's that? Leaving your room, is that what you said? Yeah. Well, and we talked about that with our staff the other day because our staff was getting mad at our students for wanting to walk away. And I said, is that really bad? Because I said, I have had to learn the hard way at home that walking away is a way better way of handling it than saying something mean that you can't take away again. We talk about walking away, and I say to them, you are not going to be in trouble if you walked away instead of punch someone. That is awesome in my mind. I say a lot of times I have to do something physical, and I think a lot of the boys need to also do something physical. So I try to say, don't you like to play basketball? Don't you need to walk around? I mean, at my last school, I had a kid who had to pace in front of me and talk to me, vent, and I was like dizzy because he's like boom, 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 like all in front of my desk, back and forth, and then all of a sudden he said, "Oh, I'm better now." I'm like, "You are?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, great. I didn't even have to do anything except listen and have you run wear my rug down in front of my desk." So just keep in mind, they're going to probably bring up the negative things. And I just encourage, I just have those real conversations with them. Like, okay, so what are some positive ways to cope with your stress? And then I wanted to share, it's hard to see this, but this was our last year's Swiss data. And so this is every single behavior referral that got written up the whole school year. So you would kind of have an idea of what kind of behaviors you're looking at. So the one with the most referrals is inappropriate language. So I just wanted to share with you so you would kind of have an idea. You're not dealing with the high-risk behaviors. You're basically dealing with inappropriate language. That's what and it's not even as bad this year as it was last year. It's better. No, once they're here, this is what we're dealing with. There was someone who got written up for larceny, and I was or arson, but I was kind of like, it wasn't really like he was trying to start the school on fire, but he had a lighter and he tried to light something, and the teacher wrote him up for arson. I was like, really? I don't know. So defiance is the second one. A lot of times the teachers would say, give a direction, you need to do this, and they would just outright refuse. And then the next one is disrespect. And then the other, which that could be any number of things, or disruption. So I wanted to kind of make you feel better that when you come, you're probably if there's an outburst, it's usually a yelling swear word outburst, and maybe a punch the wall as they're walking through somewhere. They are, so they hurt their hands usually. Yeah, exactly. Let me pull out my pillow or something. It'd be better for you if you didn't do it that way. And I think, I used to work there 15 years ago, and I was pregnant with both my girls, and while I worked there, and we used to have, for some reason, we thought it would be a great idea to have milk crates for them to carry all their stuff with, and they would throw them. And that was like, they'd never throw them at us or anything, but they'd throw them. And I remember sitting at a table and someone's throwing stuff, and I was pregnant and people are throwing stuff around me. And I just sat there like totally calm. And I thought, that's where I'm at now again. Like this punching and like yelling goes on. And I'm like, whatever, they'll be fine. Like I'll just, I'll go in there in a minute and they'll calm down. And that's what happens. But you do get used to it the more you're there. But like I said, I wanted to share with you so you would know, you're really not in danger. It's really minor. So it's the F word maybe a lot. The B word. No, it's hard. I mean, it's hard because the kids don't even, I say to them, we don't use that language in my house, and we also don't raise our voices. So I tell them, so sometimes I have a hard time when I'm here because I get tired of hearing that or people yelling at me because I'm not used to it. That's not what we do at my house. And they're like, you don't? I mean, and they honestly, I think they're serious. They don't realize that people live different ways. They just haven't been exposed to something different. So then my next slide, the shock value. And someone put this on like a quote. I like saying outrageous things for shock value. The look on a person's face when I say something ridiculous is just priceless. And I don't know who said that, but that's kind of our students. Larry was there, and these kids who were middle schoolers and never ever talked about like anything inappropriate would be before, all of a sudden started talking about drugs. And I'm like, what? Like out of the blue. And it didn't make even sense to me. And, I know another kid told one of the people who came in a story about their grandfather that was like horrific. And I said, I don't know if it's true or not, because he's never told me that. So I think that, I don't know, I just think that they're apt to tell you something that may or may not be true. And a lot of times I won't, the things that people have said, that kids have said, they haven't told me and no one else has brought it up to me, so I don't know. A couple of the girls last year came here for youth group, and this is another example of it. One of the first things they did was announce to the group. I mean, this is a group of kids they've never been around before. And the first thing they did was announce, like, we're bisexual. And, they probably are bisexual, but like, again, they never told me that at school, but yet this was the first thing they felt like they needed to share with a whole group of peers and the leaders. So I'm just telling you that, just don't be surprised by it, because, just be like, okay. So if they tell you an outrageous story, you can either tell these ladies or tell me, and then we will take care of it, because that's our job. We're mandated reporters, so if it is information, we will do that for you, and that's our job. I haven't had the experience often that they want to share the real stuff. It's more, I think they would share like about drugs. They want to brag about that. The middle schoolers are pretty, their stories are going to be a lot different than the high school kids' stories. They're actually really sweet boys. Yeah. Okay, so I was saying appropriate examples of physical touch, because this came up when we were talking about it. I would just always ask for permission too. Like, can I give you a high five? Is it all right if I give you knuckles? Do you need a side hug? Like, sometimes our kids are crying and I don't want to leave them hanging because it seems like they really need something. So is it okay if I give you a side hug? That kind of thing. And you'll get to know your people, and some of our kids love to give hugs to people, and others no. They do not want to be touched, and you will probably get the feel for it right away. Hand on the shoulder, arm, that's pretty, but again, I would still say, is it okay if I, but what other things can you think of? What other forms of touching can you think of? Some of them will want to. Well, and I think you need to share how you feel about it. So I'm not super touchy-feely, so I'm more comfortable with side hugs, but there are some times when someone needs a hug, and, I'm really, like, I have that motherly thing, and I might give them a hug. I think it's important to model, like, not a hang on there hug, like it's a short hug. And I've never had any of the students we have right now, do any sort of form of physical touch that was inappropriate with a staff member. I haven't. Like I said, our students right now, I don't know, they're looking for like a mother and father figure is that's the kind of stuff they say to me, like, you're like my mom, you're like my second mom. And I just try to, go with that, like, yeah, like I think of you like a kid too. And, just try to be, even though he's 19. So I wanted to share a little bit about sharing your faith. And so I did have to look up the laws, because I feel like at Berkeley Hills and at this job, you sometimes have the opportunity just because the kid brings it up. So I don't want you to feel like you can't do it, but I want you to know what the law says. The law says in free time, students have a right to pray, discuss religion, and read religious texts as long as the activities don't interfere with instructional time, are student-led, and don't force others to participate. So students can form religious clubs, but they can't be led by adults. Outside groups can't proselyte. I can't say that word. Proselytize to students during the day or at school events, or distribute. Like, you can't come give Bibles. And schools can't use religious content to promote abstinence. Praying in schools can't be teacher or adult led. And books like the Bible can't be studied in school in a devotional manner. However, if you were sharing about religions, like, there could be an appropriate time that could bring. So I said, just don't bring it to Outlook, but if someone brings something up, just talk to me about it. So what does that mean? You can share if it's student initiated. So if they ask you and, they say, how do you deal with this, with your stress? Like, I bet you Suzanne might say, I read my Bible, or I listen to worship songs or something. Like, it's okay to say that. And then if they ask you more, you can share a little bit more. I don't think you could do it right there, but you could say, I will pray for you when I leave. But you could say, I'm going to go out when I leave, I'm going to pray for you and your family, or whatever, if they are wanting that. Yeah. So do you guys want to do the logistics? This is really small. I don't know if you can even read it. I can put my glasses on. So I was saying, call prior to coming to your time to make sure your students are there once you get hooked up with them, because I would not want you to come all the way there and to find out that who you normally meet with isn't there. And then mentoring is going to be 1 to 2 times a month for 30 to 45 minutes. So we're not asking for like a humongous commitment. It's really it can be quite small. But I think even a small meeting with kids is going to make a difference for them. And then we ask that if you decide on your schedule to try to stick with it the best you can. The kids know things happen. But if you're not going to come that week, maybe come the week after then instead. Like, things happen, but try really hard to keep your commitment, because that is really important. And I just said, like, our students are, like, they've been disappointed a lot, so we don't want to be the ones who disappoint them even more. And then we wanted to point out, in case you didn't realize, there were 17 male students and 3 female, and we have a lot of female mentors. So we wanted to ask about that and see who would be comfortable meeting with males. And like I said, I have a 19-year-old student who's like, you're like my mom. And I mean, I'm definitely old enough to be his mom, even though my kids are younger, but I didn't start early having children, so he could easily be my kid, and his older siblings could be my kids. And I think, if I were with another person walking in, I would be comfortable, but again, we need to know what your take is. So please make sure you share that with Kathy or Emily, so when we pair you up, we know. There are 3 female students. We're going to create teams, like we said, so there'll be 2 adults to 2 or 3 or 4 kids, just depending on how it all shakes down. And then our hours for mentoring will be 8:30 to 1. So the starting time of like the latest starting time to meet with someone would be around 12:15, 12:30 if we're really pushing it. We do have, our kids do, but not all our kids are involved. They do a physical activity at the end of the day, and that's why I was trying to stay away from it. But if there was one group that met during that time, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. We get done with school at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays and 2:30 the rest of the days. So we can push it back later if, for one group if we need to. We're averaging about 15 kids a day out of 20 right now. So, but it's always different people who show up every day. So, yep, they can chew gum. They love chewing gum. They also love candy. And so I said, you can make a difference because every kid is one caring adult from being a success story. So when we talk about building relationships, we think that's the most important part of how we can make a difference for our kids, how we build that resilience. And, we have kids who come for short amount of times, but we have kids who come and never go back to their schools because they want to stay there. So if you were to be matched up with kids and then for some reason they left, there are going to be more kids coming. Yeah. And it's not a huge changeover, but there are changeovers. So I didn't want you to think you would be there for years. Like some kids will be there for years and other kids will not. So, and then what questions do you have for us? And I don't think Emily shared that she's a social worker. So that's her background. So I'm thankful that we have someone coming who has that background too. The kids really do just want attention. And, like Tony was asking, you have that many staff to ratio, but they seriously sometimes need one-on-one attention or want that, or, two adults to 2, whatever it is, but they're just really, I don't think they've gotten attention. And so to have your undivided attention and really you're not going to have to go in there with an idea. They're going to take you somewhere. My office has space. I can walk out. The main front office has space, but people are in there. So it just kind of depends. And if you don't mind having people in the room, sometimes that's nice too, because you have more ears. Or you can have my space, or there's a coat room with 2 chairs in it, because sometimes we have people who need a place to meet and there's nowhere else. So it's, wherever we can find. The boys like to shoot baskets. That's an option, even if you don't shoot baskets. Yeah, I don't know how to.